Hello, welcome to Ask ADI Anything. Today's webinar is the final episode in our Resurgence series. Don't worry, it's not the final episode overall. Just in this series, we have more series planned for May, June, and July. We'll announce those series shortly. Now, over the last 4 weeks, we've received hundreds of questions on the webinars that we have done, questions about the future of their careers from students, questions about how craftspeople are going to survive, how design firms are going to survive. So today's episode is going to see a little less of me talking. That's been another request. Can we have less of Suresh talking? And I'm going to take questions from audience and I'm going to pose it to our all-star panel here. And if you have further questions that you would like to ask us today, use the Q&A function and send us your questions. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes. The room is filling up. We have about 87, 88 participants. While we do that, can I ask Karishma Ajmera, Treasurer of ADI, to say hello to all of us? Karishma?
Hi, everyone. So happy to see you here today. I'm Karishma Ajmera. I run a UX design company in Bangalore. And as part of ADI, I play the role of treasurer at both the national level and at the Bangalore chapter level. The ADI is an independent national body of the design community that creates an interface between design professionals and the industry, the educational institutes, and the policy makers in the government. The ADI leverages the expertise and strong network of designers to plan design events, share design knowledge and resources through focused activities, as well as strengthen design education in the country. The ADI works with the belief that design is essential for economic and social development.
Can't hear her.
Karishma, I think your audio has gone off. Could you just repeat the last couple of sentences?
Is this better?
Yeah,
we can hear you now.
Can you repeat the last couple of things that you said, the last 4 or 5 sentences?
The current COVID situation and change that it has brought upon us has presented umpteen challenges. We have learned to realign ourselves and define a new normal. Much like other communities, the design community has also been disrupted. The question that everyone is asking is, how do we survive? What happens after? What's next? And how do we prepare for resurgence? Right through the month of April, ADI has facilitated a webinar every week on the theme of resurgence. During each webinar, we received scores of questions from you about how the design industry is affected by COVID-19. But unfortunately, we ran out of time each time to respond to all your queries. Today, we're bringing back some of our previous speakers and panelists and adding a few more experts who will be here to answer all your questions. I also want to take a minute to let you know that you can keep abreast of all the exciting events that ADI facilitates every month by signing up to becoming a member on our website, adi.org.in. Thanks. Over to you, Suresh.
Thanks, Karishma. All right, let's introduce our panelists. We have Anushka Sani. She's the founder of Thought Over Design.
Hi.
Vinay Rao is the founder and director
Hello.
of Bank Design from Bangalore. Devika Krishnan is the CEO of Vayati Weaves. Hi, Devika.
Hi.
Jay Datta is the Senior Vice President Product Design at Make My Trip in India. Ashwini Deshpande, who is joining us through audio because connectivity is poor due to a thunderstorm in Pune. She's the director and co-founder of Elephant Design. Ayush Kasliwal is the CEO and creative director of AKDPL, Ayush Kasliwal Designs Private Limited. All right, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, we're going to jump into it. Now, before we start, you know the session is being recorded as a video recording, and we have Tanvi Nabar, who's an artist and designer. She'll be making sketch notes during the session. At the end of the session, she will share her sketch notes with us. Let's start first with a poll to assess the mood in the room. One of our audience members, Shankar Subramaniam, sent us this poll question. He said, what is the mood in the room? Seema, Anshu, if we can fire the first poll. What's the mood in the room? Fear, panic, hope, or despair? You have 20 seconds to vote. All right, voting is done. All right, overwhelming 76% is hope. All right, thank you. Let me first go to Jay Datta. JD, if you can unmute your audio. And I notice you're wearing a block printed shirt, a Ranthambore shirt,
That's
perhaps?
right, yeah.
All right. Devika is very happy with that. The first question we have, and some questions have come from multiple people and some have come from specific people. Multiple questions people have asked us, what good is a designer in time of an apocalypse? Are designers needed at all? JD, you?
Well, we are probably virus fodder, that's for sure. But apart from that, I think each one of us can help in some ways. Firstly, by staying home, that's very, very important. But there are a bunch of ways you can help. And I think we are seeing a lot of people do that in their own special, small ways. I guess the main thing is to just find ways, find reasons, and find ways in which we can leverage on our design learning, design skills, etc. I know Ashwini has been doing something. I know a lot of people have been doing a bunch of things. I've been involved in something as well. It's just leveraging what you have and using that, even if it affects a one person, two people, 30, 40, maybe 30 million for that matter, or 1.3 billion, that's great. But I think scale would be great. But even if it's not scale, even making matters good for one person, great.
All right. Question number 2 from Tanvi Palkar. And I'm going to give this to Rashmi. Rashmi, you run Studio Copper. You do a lot of work with artisans and craftspeople in the area of copper and also in the weaving industry. How are you gearing up for the after quarantine situation? What happens when the quarantine is lifted?
Yeah, so we have plans for kickstarting so-called our supply chain, because for the past month and a half our artisans have been idle and they have been completely out of work, which means that it's a kind of circular thing for us, because the markets are down, the revenues on our website have fallen, and therefore the artisans have no work. To kickstart this whole thing, we have sort of chalked out a plan, a medium-term kind of plan, that we would, in fact, we're using this time to design newer products that will address, needs for COVID. So since copper is antimicrobial and it has self-cleaning properties, so we've already started working on products that will, address this thing for the market. And hopefully then this will translate into more work for the artisans. And we're also collaborating because, I think human beings have two very precious commodities. One is money and the other is time. And fortunately for us on this panel, or whoever's listening in today, we have time on our side. We are not on the front lines. So I think that this time is best utilized to A, to collaborate, B, to design, C, to keep talking to your artisans, and send them sketches and things like that. All this we have put into process already.
All right, next question is for Ayush Kasliwal. Ayush, how are you marketing your products during the lockdown? You depend a lot on retail sale, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we do depend a lot upon retail sales, but we also have a significant footprint in institutional sales. Now, the challenge that we get is that in institutional sales, we get the feedback that their markets are not there. So we've seen a cutback in orders. So right now, what we're trying to do is look at forecasts, look at how things are changing, and design to them. I don't know whether it's the right time to market as such. I think it's the time to speak and talk about what is needed. I think there are other pressing concerns, and to actually push out a product right now might not be the wisest thing to do. It is not the climate for it. It is not the time for it. So we're kind of holding back a little bit and seeing, strategically, what do we need to do over a slightly longer period of time, and being a design company, respond by design and not just by pushing out what we have.
All right. Anushka, you're a young design firm. How many people do you have in your design firm?
We're 9 of us.
All right. So here's the question for you.
Yeah.
The question from one of our viewers is how to stay positive and design things when you know your career is at stake. Not your career, but the people who work with you. How do you motivate them to keep going when who knows what's going to happen next?
Yeah, I think we've kind of done a little bit of what Jay was talking about. We kind of put the word out there that we're available. One or two of our projects got pushed to later, so we put the word out there that they were available to help with projects that are helping the crisis. So we actually ramped up a little bit and started working a few more hours every day to help a couple of clients that are doing things in the space of addressing the crisis in some way, whether it's a contact tracing app or a crowd sourcing campaign for some data. And I think that really motivated the team to know that, look, while we can't directly help in some way, we're staying home and we're also doing something. Apart from that, I think that, there's so many interesting things going on online. You can even participate in some fundraising campaigns, put your art out there and make something out of it, fundraise for a certain NGO. So I think there are ways to kind of positively use our time. That being said, I think it's also really okay to sometimes not feel that positive. I think while all of us over here are always trying to feel positive, I think all of us go through ups and downs. I go through them too. And so we need to also be really easy on ourselves when we're having a tough day and communicate with whoever we might be working with that, I'm having a bad day today. Maybe they'll help you get your mood up in some other way. I don't think it's possible for everyone to be at 100% all the time right now. And I think that's totally fine.
All right, next question for Devika Krishnan. We have a question that's come in right now. How will the lockdown impact the hiring of designers and crafts companies, for instance?
Pretty badly. Just as it's been tough for most other enterprises. So I not just in this crisis, but in all my years when people ask me questions about how has this affected the craft sector, how has tsunami affected the craft sector, or an earthquake affected the craft sector, I say, how has it affected the automotive sector or any other manufacturing sector? So we have to actually look at craft as a manufacturing sector which employs people, accepting that it's more people-oriented than machine-oriented. And so just the way other agencies are having a tough time hiring, craft is also having a tough time hiring.
All right, so not good news for a crafts designer. It's going to be a little tough, but it's going to be tough for everybody.
Yes.
If that's of any consolation for you.
Yeah.
All right, next question comes from Shalini Subramanian. She's a designer, maker of slow fashion. Shalini asks, Ashwini, in your opinion, what could an organization like ADI do to assist design-led local businesses in this time of crisis? And she says, I do not necessarily mean monetarily. What else could ADI be doing?
Sure, I think it's a real question for most of us. What could ADI really do for any kind of agency or freelancer or student or even academics? Because all of us are facing something which we've never faced before. So I think as a community, of course, there is knowledge sharing which we are doing right now, and sometimes it's just good to have like a sounding board and just say things out loud and mind clears. Sometimes you want some very specific kind of advice, and then you could be asking for that. And I think this kind of a panel has such a diversity that you could ask any kind of question. But what ADI really could do is, one, support in terms of trying to say what is likely to happen as the next scenario. What are the trends that are going to be in place right after we get out of this lockdown stage, which is actually not going to be one day, but it's going to be phased out. What ADI could also do is try and create certain possibilities of new learnings. So if any of us are able to take some learning sessions, either give or take, I think those could be organized through ADI. ADI could also reach out to corporates and try and get them to think of how they could use design in many ways, and have a roster of freelancers or smaller agencies that could be connected to these corporates. So many things could be done. Many things need to be done, and I think one of them is what's happening right now.
All right, so become a member of ADI. It's adi.org.in. Become a member, give us your suggestions, and we'll try and do as much as we can. Vinay, next question for you. Anushka just said that her company's actually ramped up a little bit during the lockdown with more work coming in, especially COVID-related work or COVID-allied work. Tell us a little bit about how it's going at Bang Design. How many people do you have, and what's the mood in the office?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. So just quick background, this is my third recession. Right? We've been running this company since the year 2000.
Okay.
It's not a recession yet, but we've seen this twice over at least before. We're somewhere between 25 and I think 27, 28 people right now. So the work, I would say, for whatever reason, I think the method of working has just moved online, but we find ourselves a lot more productive, and I think that's a very good thing. And there's actually a lot more work to do now if you have clarity on what you want to do next, once we expect this lockdown to end, or even just in addressing the the COVID crisis itself. So while some of our past projects, and we work in a slightly different model. We are not a conventional agency model. We have a skin in the game in what we do. So quite often our work is developing and licensing to brands. So we see a huge amount of work in in the area of health, public wellness and sanitation. That's all going to be happening very soon. Plus, there's a whole bit of, I would say, wellness, fashion. Those are all areas that we're currently working in. If anything, I think we're at a point where we just have too much to do.
Are you also thinking of ramping up that, like Anushka said?
So are we ramping up people?
Yeah.
As of now, no. We've always a partly distributed company. I've always had people in multiple cities, in multiple countries, and that is still the case. It's just that we always had a central nervous system that we had all our things coming in and so on, that used to make it easier. That's not the case anymore. So I think we would be opportunistically adding on partners, not necessarily people.
Okay.
In a project as we go along.
Okay, next question for JD. This is from Mahima. Mahima asks, JD, how can young designers collaborate with functional teams that might need more bandwidth? For example, the Arogya Setu team might need more designers. How can a young designer sign up with you?
No, great question. There are actually quite a few teams who have reached out, people who have ideas on what to build on top of Arogya Setu, people who can contribute skills, people who can do a bunch of other things. So as of now, as and when there's a need, so for example, we actually needed illustrators pretty badly, and we've kind of are working with a studio who reached out to us. We're doing that. We are in touch with over 19 NGOs who have been doing some great work in terms of content. Because what Arogya Setu does is also goes out in 12 languages and to a very, very diverse set of people. So for example, hand washing is great. I think for you and me, it's great. But what about people who don't have enough water, running water there? So there are people who are doing some amazing content. What does self-isolation mean when you are a family of 5 in a 10-foot by 10-foot room? Kind of what does all of, so there are a whole bunch of people who have thought about this. We are kind of getting the content into the Arogya Setu app in multiple languages. We are also working, I think the one big need for us today, more than designers, is translators. Because we need to translate everything into 12 languages. The government of Assam is actually, the Chief Minister's office is providing translations to us on ad hoc basis, because almost every day something goes out and has to be translated, right? So I think that's probably the biggest challenge for us. But yeah, I mean, please feel free to reach out at any point in time. If we have the need, we would definitely kind of be happy to involve. Right. Content would be a big area, actually.
All right, let's get on to the next question. Ayush, I think this question is for you. One of our viewers asks, how do you see the handicraft industry bouncing back post-COVID, and how can designers contribute?
So I think, I'll answer part of it, and Devika might want to answer part of it as well. So, there's a huge sentiment that we are seeing, which is for the handmade, which I think we need to ride upon and establish not as a fad or something that happens in a time of crisis, but something that happens in the normal course of life in any case. So I think the times have always been tough for the makers, and the fact that we have a great response and a lot of people are sympathetic to the idea and are looking upon it as a very viable option. I mean, a lot of things that we do in our homes are now we doing it ourselves. We are kind of cleaning our own stuff. We're making our own food. So I think the relationship to the hand itself has changed in these few days, and thereby a respect for the handmade. And I think that is something which people are going to hold very, I wouldn't say dear to them, but as an experience that is important. And I think that might carry on. So I'm actually very optimistic about the outcome of this process. This said, it is very tough for the makers because many of them had stock, many of them had raw material, no orders. So, it's a very complex scenario, and there's no one solution that can possibly come out of it. There'll be many, many solutions. What we need firstly is to look upon ourselves as people who use products that are handmade. So just get something handmade. I think to start with, that's the first thing that all of us can do, quite irrespective of what we do and what our skills are. And if you're a designer, the first thing you can do is see what around you can work with. If you have a tailor around you, okay, let me design something for myself, which might be something new for the tailor to work with. Or let me, it's just exploring. We are fortunate to be living in a country like India, where things are made literally around the corner of our homes. And I think to grab that opportunity with both hands and say, let me see what I can do and start doing it would be the very first step.
Okay.
There are a lot of other NGOs, organizations, enterprises like what Rashmi is doing, what Devika is doing, who are involved in it. Yes, but then there are other situations also and other circumstances that all these companies and organizations have to be very cognizant of. So I would say if I had to, just go start doing something, see what is around you, see what's around you, start there.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to get a couple of shirts tailored with my local tailor after this, Ayush.
Yes, good.
In fact, the maid who used to cook for me is also a part-time tailor, so I'm going to get her to make some clothes for me. Devika, another part of this question that comes to you. You said the craft sector is a manufacturing industry like any other. Now, big industry, automobile industry, for instance, or a heavy industry, there's talk of big ticket financial aid to those industries, and they might recover a bit faster. Is it any different for the craft industry? Will it take longer to recover than, say, automotive industry, for instance?
It would take longer. It always has taken longer because the governmental policies have always been pro mass production. We don't even have to go as far as the automotive. We just have to take handloom textiles versus mill-made textiles. The amount of subsidy that powerloom industries get versus what we have to struggle through in handloom is itself why people go for cheap powerloom rip-offs of original handloom pieces. So yes, at policy level, things have to change if things have to improve. That said, I have worked close to 3 decades in the craft sector, and I'm telling you, there is nothing more resilient than the craft industry.
Okay.
We will not bow down, like come what may. You take any calamity that has come our way. You take the earthquake that devastated Bhuj. Entire communities that were into Ajrak printing, their villages were obliterated. But you know what? Because it's a craft that ties up a people, because it's an occupation that is not a singular boss who's governing down towards his minions, but it's a community that works together. The biggies in the trade actually pooled money together, bought a large tract of land, and put all the Ajrak printers together and formed Ajrakpur. Ajrakpur is an offshoot, is a little child of the earthquake. And it's a thriving industry. You take basket weavers along the coast in Tamil Nadu. I mean, I have so many examples where people has come up with the strength after a calamity.
All right, next question goes to Ashwini Deshpande. I'm going to take off from what Devika said about designers impacting policy. And here's a controversial question. Why does the Indian design community take an apolitical stance? Ashwini, should we as designers have a stronger political voice?
Is it a political? I don't think so. I think we've been, if you see any of the WhatsApp groups of designers, there are a lot of very heavy political discussions. So I don't think we've really been that. But perhaps we've been, and this is one of the things that I feel designers need. I think if we really want our voice heard, and if we want to make a difference in the political scenario, we need to learn diplomacy, which we haven't learned yet. And I think we need to learn that. And then, Chief Minister of Maharashtra is an art school graduate from JJ School of Arts. So, I mean, he's learned something else besides the art, right?
He's actually learned the art of art itself, so we can. All right, next question to Anushka Sani. This is from Abhishek Jana, one of our viewers. He says, do you think design agencies should encourage their employees to go out and take up individual freelance work because agencies may not be able to pay full salaries for a short while?
Yeah. I think this is a good question because, I think I've also had this chat with my team, because we've been hearing things about some agencies doing pay cuts and things like that. We've actually also been talking about whether to even retain our studio because we're a small studio, so we don't know really what to do. I think if an agency is going to be giving a pay cut, I think it's only fair that people who are on the team are able to take on other work if they're able to get that other work. I think what would also be a really smart idea, and if you're a young designer in an organization, and if you're able to get business, maybe you could speak to the founder or a partner in your company and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to also try and bring business to the company. And if that's possible, maybe they could get a commission on the project as well. So why limit it to just a small freelance project? I think everyone can become a tool for business development at a time like this. And if you're getting a bigger project that requires more people, involve the company as well. But yes, I think if agencies are giving pay cuts, perhaps giving people the freedom to do a couple of more things, if they have the time to do that as well. If they're giving a shorter time period to work in, why not?
And Anushka, you personally would be open to this kind of revenue share with your team if they brought in a new client?
And I've actually told people in the past as well on my team, if you bring in any business, let's chat about it. I've always been pretty open about it. And just to kind of talk about the point that I mentioned earlier when I was talking about ramping up, I actually meant that ramping up the number of hours we were putting in. I think right now we're being mindful about hiring new people. That being said, we had hired 2 freshers, but one of them is actually able to join because they're in Bombay, so they're able to join. So that's just a point on the ramping up. I think everyone's also being a little wary about how they're ramping
up. Next question for you. So, I'm just going to rephrase. Sorry, did somebody else want to contribute?
No, I was just going to say.
Sorry to
I was going to say that the revenue share, the things that you do with your colleagues is actually a great deal. They're sort of married to working with you for a long time anyway, and giving them a stake in the outcome actually works wonders in multiple ways. And so even if there's a success on a particular program, it's always good to go reward that team more than just the original salary that they were getting.
And that's just not a COVID intervention. That could be a
It's not just a COVID intervention. Yeah.
All right. Now, Rashmi, next question for you. We're getting multiple people saying that the pandemic is actually making them even more productive because they're working without distractions. They're focused on what they're doing. They're working from home, no time lost in the meeting.
I think they're going to end, but so I'll elaborate a little on this. So a week into the pandemic or a week into the lockdown, there are 4 of us who run the show at Copper for Women, and we had a web chat, and we said, okay, and what do we do? And at that time, there was a slight panic because we didn't know where this was headed. We didn't know how long the studio had to be sort of shut and how to assign work to everybody. So all of them, all the others one to me, Rashmi, this is the time to hunker down and design. This is what you wanted all your life. And, you're not going to get this chance again. So please focus on design. Focus on the portfolio that Copper has at the moment. Focus on the designs that we have. Focus on thinking about time. But once the lockdown lifts, we are all going to rush back into the madness of everything. I'm pretty sure about that because, yeah.
All right. We have over 175 people, I think, currently tuned into this discussion. It's time for poll number 2. Anshu or Seema, if you can fire poll number 2, let's get the audience's opinion. What one subject do you wish you were taught in design school? Finance, marketing, HR, or all of the above? What would have helped you the most during this time?
Again, I wish panelists could vote. Yeah, this is unfair.
Personally, I wish design school taught us how to cook and clean our houses, but that's not a design school's job. Okay, we have 20 seconds.
I would say finance.
All right, let me first ask the panelists. There you go, all of the above, 50%, and the other 2 is split between finance and marketing. So design school should be teaching finance, marketing, and HR. Thank you, Anshu. Thank you, Seema. Yeah, so Rashmi, you echo that? You wish you were taught a little more finance?
Completely. Yeah. I mean, There is no doubt about it.
Anushka, you agree?
Because
a little more finance?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
It's been
Ayush,
full.
sorry. Yeah. Ayush, yeah.
I think many things are driven or distracted by a fear of numbers. It's a fear. And I think getting rid of that fear, because numbers come in so many different pieces. When you're looking at a spreadsheet on your sales, you're dealing with numbers. Statistics, I think, would be one thing which might need to teach, because it gets rid of the fear of numbers and to make overall larger patterns of it. Is one thing which I would say a design school should teach, how to look at numbers, statistics, and make sense out of them.
So data science, in a sense, is what you'd suggest. Yeah, Devika, go ahead.
I think basic business management. We all came out of design school without any idea how any business runs. We were very good with form follows function, da, 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 da. But how does money follow form or function was something we never understood. So I think that is really important. And the other thing, what I liked about the poll is that, damn, as a community, we find HR redundant.
Yeah, I know.
Like, what?
Nobody wants to learn HR.
No.
Yeah, true. Devika, if I may suggest a book called Business for Bohemians. It's an excellent book written for designers and creative people. And it's I forget the author's name, but it's a very nice book on how Bohemians should run a business. All right. Actually, Devika, next question is for you as well. Fields like textile design are heavily dependent on tactile experience to the customer. This obviously takes a heavy toll during the lockdown. How would you suggest alternative routes for textile designers to survive?
I think a lot can be done online, even in terms of textile sales, because you can have, the company that I'm heading right now is into handloom and into promoting handloom, and we're actually trying to see how well can we photograph or video the textiles that are being produced so that people get a touch and feel of it online by just looking at it. And in today's day and age, how many people actually hold a piece of textile before buying it? A lot of the buying is done online in any case. A lot of our sales happen, even international sales happen, like say from Ranthambore or Kashmir, online. So I don't think it's such a tough ask. I think logistics right now is the issue.
Next question from the audience for Ashwini Deshpande. Would design firms like Elephant, for instance, consider offering work from home internships during this period? Would you hire somebody to work from their home, Ashwini?
So I think internships is a tricky part, because I don't think internship is only about learning on a project. I think it's much more about the culture of the place. It's much more about peer learning from other interns, learning from, we don't believe internships can be done online. At least we are not considering it. But if somebody has worked out a model which works just fine and people still learn culture and peer and so on, then happy to hear about it, but not at
Next question for Vinay Rao. Vinay, we have a viewer who asks, product design doesn't offer much opportunity for freelance work, right? Because it requires organization, prototyping. I'm guessing it requires a physical office and other infrastructure. What can product designers do to capitalize on the current scenario?
I think the first thing is, if you want to stay freelance, then you got to bring down your selling and general administrative costs. So you got to pick a platform that's going to do the marketing for you to start with. It's going to solicit, customers for you, or at least opportunities for you that you can bid on. So you spend a lot less time bidding on those things and spend a lot more time in doing things so that you can actually earn revenue from it. But an even better option might be to, instead of freelancing, then you could join an already distributed flower design studio, and there are quite a few of those. One of them is ours, popping up around the world. So that's always an option. So if you have the portfolio, if you have the skills, if you have the reach, if you have the experience, then I don't think that's really much of a constraint. Freelancers in general, they spend 80% of the time marketing, right? And 20% of the time doing work, and that's something they need to flip over.
All right, another quick reminder to those of you viewers who are listening, you're welcome to send us your questions through the Q&A. Try and avoid sending the questions on the chat forum. Send us your questions through the Q&A mechanism. It's easier for us to filter those questions out. Next question in Ask AD Anything goes to JD. Milan Karyappa asks, JD, you might have a curious smile when I give you this question. Why do corporates cut design budgets first?
Okay, let's take it in two ways. I think corporates will have two sorts. Increasingly today, kind of, will have two kinds of design budgets. One, the budget for their own in-house teams, and the other, which is for the external agencies and so on. What has happened in the past 5-10 years is increasingly the size and scale of in-house agencies, or rather in-house studios, have actually gone up. If you look at the Deconstruct report, which we published early this year, you will see that that kind of really outweighs the external agencies. So essentially, if you're thinking of being an agency to a corporate, yes, it's likely that anything which is outside of the company will get cut. But if you are an internal studio like we are, and I've been part of so many kind of now, actually we are still hiring because we still feel this is a great time for us to design. I think Rashmi also mentioned that. This is a great time to do all the things that are actually on the backlog, which we have always wanted to do and have not been able to because of business pressure. This is actually the perfect time to do it. So while we are still hiring internally, we might actually cut out external costs like marketing, advertising, a whole bunch of other things, sales, etc. kind of thing. Because obviously there's no sales happening right now. The flights are grounded. So yeah, that's probably where there will be a cut in the external, but probably no cuts or even enhancement in the internal budgets.
All right, another question that just come in says, what's the one message this panel would like to give to clients during this time? Anushka, you said you're ramping up the amount of work that you're doing. Are clients ramping up the amount of money?
I think that point was mainly about also trying to help projects that were doing things in the COVID space. For example, I did a project with Dalberg India 2 weeks ago, and you would take about like 1 month to do a project like that. But we made sure we worked 2 weekends to do that project because we really felt the timeliness of launch was very important, you know. So I feel like when you're ramping up, it's also about where you are, and you need to be a little concerned about, like, for example, are people just expecting you to ramp up because they think you're free? You know, I think it's good to have a schedule and map your time and manage expectations as well. That said, I think something very interesting that's come out at this time is mutual empathy. I think everyone's really understanding that people are working from home and there are certain things that are going to happen. And there's a little bit of leeway that even we're giving clients are giving us. And I think sometimes it's also good to notice the positive side of these things, right? So like people are just being a little bit more empathetic if you're not able to send something on time, or, you know, if you're not able to schedule a meeting as aligned as possible with everyone. So I think there's some positives coming out of here as well with regards to relationships with clients, you know.
Ashwini, same question to you. Messaging to clients, what are you telling your clients? What are they telling you?
So very interesting times, and I think as the weeks are passing, the messages are changing. So first couple of weeks there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of checking what could be done for this situation. Could there be some quick solutions from our companies that could come out and so on? And they're all happening now. But as we progressed, I think most of us realized that we don't have to change drastically or radically to just manage because we are working from home. So all those businesses that are actually going on, and there are some, for example, FMCG is going on, or pharma is going on, healthcare is going on. I think all those businesses that are on right now that haven't halted, there is no reason to radically differentiate something. But all those that are completely halted, and this is the interesting part, all those which are completely halted are actually thinking of what to do ahead. And we are here to give that patient ear and the support and facilitation and all of that. So it's like they say that you should have planted your tree 20 years ago. I think many of the clients, I would say, if you haven't planted it, do it now. It will come in handy when next time there'll be I hope not, but if there will be a situation like that.
Ayush, next question.
So that's what I would tell the clients, plant your tree now.
Sorry. Ayush, next question for you. One of our viewers asks, okay, work from home is all very fine. How do you get the tangible aspects of the design process? Prototyping, testing, iterating, especially for physical products. You work a lot with physical products that require touch and feel. How do you do all that when you're working from home?
You know, one thing we need to realize is this work from home is not forever.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to change.
Mm-hmm.
There is this tactile experience that cannot be done from this digital medium. You know, when you're working with something, there's a weight, there's a structure, there's a wooden section that needs to work in one way. I mean, when we're doing products, we don't even rely on our drawings. We rely on the prototype that is made. It's experienced. You sit on a chair, you know it works or it doesn't work. There's no amount of drawing or digital imagination that can make that happen. So that aspect, I feel, is something which will have to be done the old way. And yes, the lockdown is going to get over. We're going to get back to it. We need not be involved in it like all the time. We can distance ourselves and go back to it. That is something that can be done. But I think that one experience cannot be changed. There's also the other thing, which is seeing how a process and a product interact. You know, a product is the outcome of a process. And sometimes the process gives us hints as to what can be done better, simpler, more beautifully, more elegantly. And I think that experience of a process is something which can be done somewhat digitally, but not quite. I think there is this, this close proximity and relationship that you need with a product to actually make it work.
Next question for JD. From Mrinmai, who asks, how are design studios managing immersive user research? You did a pretty intense two-week project to bring the Arogya Setu app. How did you manage to do immersive user research with the lockdown in force?
Yeah, I wish we could have done some of the immersive research stuff. I think a lot of it actually was fairly rushed because of the nature of what we were and we still are dealing with. So it probably went with a relatively thin research, but we have been interpreting data pieces every day, every night, kind of. That's been going on. The other thing is that the government is actually making a set of call to people who have been unwell. And those calls also provide us a lot of data. So I think if I'm not mistaken, yesterday there were about 141,000 calls made. And out of those calls, you would at least get some data on the way people are using it or not able to understand, a whole bunch of things. So the amount of data is enormous. That's what is happening. And every day we're getting it, we are moving with it. The example that I would like to give you is not that, though. I would probably give you a very quick example from a very different situation, which was not a wartime situation, but a peacetime situation, where one of our speakers for Design Up in Singapore, she actually told this wonderful story of designing for the immigration counters in New Zealand. And obviously you could not go to the security and keep going again and asking people. There are people who are tired, who have got kids, who have come after 24-hour long flights. They recreated an immersive virtual environment. They would make the same users go back to it again after they have been rested. And they would kind of talk about what would it feel like, what if, what not, etc. And I think this was a wonderful use case of how you could use immersive research in situations where you really can't go back. This would be a great example if we could have the setup kind of ready for us.
Anushka, next question for you. What should a 2020 design school graduate be thinking of when they apply for jobs? They're all going to be graduating in the middle of this lockdown.
Yeah.
If one of them were to apply to you, what would you expect portfolio-wise? What should they be doing mindset-wise?
I think firstly, let's acknowledge that right now it's a tough time. I think, companies like maybe Jay is hiring, from outside. I think they should also look at where to be applying right now. So perhaps companies that have internal design teams or companies that are slightly bigger that work on like very large scale retainers that can manage to hire right now, they should look at applying to places like that. But that said, I think if you're applying to a smaller studio right now, be a little empathetic about the time as well, because I think sometimes a lot of people apply and they keep following up. So it's good to kind of also be empathetic about the time and maybe even talk about the fact that if they're open to starting a little later so that, people can look at the portfolio with the lens that, hey, this is not for someone who wants to join right now, but later, and they can flag it for, their teams to go through their portfolios later. One general feedback I would say, and maybe Ashwini would kind of agree to something like this, is keep the portfolio brief. I think a very succinct deck is better than sending multiple links to things. And I think more about the intention of your work rather than a plethora of work. I think also one little feedback to people who are in design school, you do a lot of various projects, but get a deep dive into one or two projects. And that really gives us a lens on how you look at your work. I think perspective right now is more important than showing, oh, I did 10 small things in these 10 projects. So I think that's just general feedback.
All right. That's excellent advice, Anushka. Okay, we have a curiously interesting question from Agnishika, and I'm going to direct this to Vinay Rao. Agnishika asks, we often discuss what we wish was taught in design schools. Is there anything designers wish design schools did not teach, things that you have to unlearn after leaving design school?
I think it's been a while since I was in design school, so like, my answer is going to be a little colored. So they were, I think there was this, state to process sort of rigor that was in design school, that there is only one method for doing something that, and that you have to follow that sort of regimen and protocol. In real life, that's not really what happens. What happens is you make do with the resources you have in front of you, and you just make do the best that you can in the time that you have and in the budget that you have. And that's really how products are done. The other thing was, I think, was an overemphasis on form. While, now, form is table stakes. I mean, you assume that everything looks as good as the incumbent, and anything that you're making has to be at least as good or much better, and it has to be, as the other panelists said, less time, less energy, less attention than anything else that was made before. But there's a lot more to anything that you do. You have to learn how to sell your, what you've done. You have to learn how to go out to the real world with what you've done. I think there's a lot of the boring side that, we consider boring in business, but can be done very nicely and in a very designerly way by designers. It's something that I wish that I was taught, and that was the part that I had to unlearn and learn for the last 20 years.
Devika, what did you have to unlearn after leaving design school?
It was so long ago. I think I unlearned most of it. But I would say the first thing that struck me when I started work is that we gave way too emphasis on the product, on the outcome, when actually learning should be about the process. And especially in the sector that I'm working in, process is really, really important, because if you can like master the process or tweak the process out, the outcomes are multiple, and it's a very different way of looking at things. I think, form and, product was always the emphasis. That's one big learning. And the other thing is, I wish I was taught the environmental cost of what I was doing, what I was up to. We as designers, we never ever look at the ecological, the humanitarian, the environmental costs of what we create. And I think that's a huge learning that needs to come up in schools, not just design schools, but I think in pretty much every discipline.
Ayush, next question for you. Do you think in this period of uncertainty that digitization and technology will make inroads into artisans, into the craft sector, into artisans collectives?
I'm fairly certain it would. And I'm very positive about it, because I think this is it's a very important link that is to be established. And artisans themselves are getting pretty savvy about using technology. We communicate on WhatsApp, multiple media. I get messages on Instagram from some of the people I work with. So I think the ground is ripe. The artisans have technology, technological access. They have the smarts, they have the will, they have the drive. And as Devika mentioned, they're super resilient. They want to get on with their lives. And I think the lag has been not on the artisan side, but on the tech side. In being able to develop the tools that are easy, simple, linguistically appropriate, make it work. So I think this is something which is long overdue and will happen. I just want to add one thing which goes back to the previous question.
Go ahead.
The thing that I had to unlearn was design process. We had to completely unlearn it, because there is no one way of design. There's so many ways of design, and how to develop a process as you are in the project, as you're dealing with what you're dealing with, is something that, I'd like to mention. All those who are in the world of education, please teach how to make a process and not a process.
I would like to add to the design in tech in the craft sector part. We really, really need help. I'm a real tech klutz. I'm just an extension of the artisanal world. We really, really need to work out tech tools that are capable of being processed or worked upon with cheap smartphones, because not every artisan has a computer or has fancy smartphones, but everybody has an inexpensive phone in his or her hands, and they're really savvy in using it. I've been using WhatsApp, and I've been using, the Kashmiris I work with have been using WhatsApp and Facebook and all the social media platforms since whenever, because, they've been facing the situation that we're facing right now for 30 years. But yeah, so things that are simpler, can we do Excel sheets? Can we, where it's easier to access on a cookie screen, on a tiny screen.
All right. Time for our third poll. Seema, Anshu, if you can fire poll number 3. What should the government do to help the design industry? And by design, I mean design and the crafts industry both recover. Do you need financial assistance? Do you need a tax break? You don't want the government to do anything. Just stay out of the way, or completely other things.
I think firstly, recognize design.
All right. That falls under the bracket of other things. Let's see how people voted. All right. So it's an even tie between financial assistance and tax breaks and other things. All right. You can close the poll. Yeah, Devika, you were saying the government needs to recognize design.
Yeah, it has to recognize design as a viable sector that is actually feeding our economy. And if you pump in enough ideas and enough policies that would push this discipline forward, we can generate huge revenues. It's about time they got design in the mainstream. In the craft sector, we really need tax breaks. You just cannot put a handmade product, which is ecologically so savvy, environmentally so savvy, and in the same tax brackets as a mass manufactured product, which is just ruining the environment.
Ashwini, I'm going to throw the same question at you. What, in your view, what could the government be doing at this time to help the design industry, and by extension, various other industries?
I think firstly, as completely agree with what Devika said, I think they firstly need to recognize that design is an industry. And it's again, not one size fits all. So within design, there is the craft and there's the technology and there is a whole host of other things. So each one needs to be understood, recognized, and well, I'm not so much for financial assistance from governments, but I'm much more for recognition and empathy from the government so that we are left to do our own thing the way we can do best. And we can also help the government to do some of those things that they don't seem to be doing right. So bring design into the government also. And yeah, I'm not so much for financial assistance too.
Okay, next question goes to Anushka Sani. This is from Purvi. She says one of the positive outcomes of the pandemic has been that the earth seems to look and feel much better. I think today the Himalayas were visible from Saharanpur, and people are reporting dolphins returning to seas and bays and everything else. And this is an incidental benefit. Post-lockdown, do you see yourself being more mindful in terms of the work that you and your company take up?
Yes, I think generally, we've tried to be. I think I'm also like a very avid diver, and I'm always kind of taking breaks to go and spend time in nature. And I think even kind of thinking about small things you do in your daily life, not just in your business, are going to become a thing that people imbibe.
Sorry, I think Anushka is having some connection issues. We'll try and get her back. We'll move on in the meantime. Joydeep, next question for you. It's actually a philosophical question, so I'm going to ask you to wear your Bengali philosopher hat. The question is, we want less consumption and yet more employment. How do we achieve this balance?
I think that's the hard one. What probably this has taught us is that actually we can consume less and still live. I guess what we are missing out on a lot is the social aspects of it, but maybe not necessarily the consumption part of it. I mean, so that's the hard one. The other part which can be there is probably digital consumption, which is the what you probably streaming a whole bunch of Netflix and Disney Plus and all of it. So there is a consumption of a different level, but not maybe goods and services in that sense. But having said that, we are also animals who need to eat and do other stuff for which we need to consume. It's a harder one because the moment you consume less, you're probably having a knock-on effect on a whole bunch of other people. Whether it's a craftsman or a farmer, because the eventual producer of something, of the raw material also gets equally impacted. The only other sort of thing here is that we all become entertainers and have our own stand-up shows or do some fun things. But apart from that, kind of consume less, and maybe I think the other thing is probably the 80s were talked about as a decade of the greed kind of thing, and it's like everyone getting greedy. And the more money you have, the more conspicuous the consumption becomes. Maybe it's time to end that. I still remember growing up in Ahmedabad where there were mill owners and they would kind of walk barefoot because they believed in Gandhism, and they probably had tons of money, but that was not to show off or not to really consume and not for themselves. I mean, it was for others as well. I think we need to go back to some of those philosophical roots, kind of where we talk about it's not just to consume, not to show off, not to kind of do a whole bunch of things, but lead the good life. And the good life can be still led without too much of it.
All right. Anushka, I'm sorry you got cut off in the mid-answer. You said you're an avid diver. That's where we lost you.
Yeah, and I think we've been seeing, an effect on the oceans for a while now. And I think this is going to make everyone think about it. And I have been thinking about it. I think as a designer, all of us sometimes think about, the impact of our work. And like Devika said, I think we were not taught enough about this in school. And I went to school a lot more recently, and I can say that we did touch upon it, but not enough to kind of make the right choices. And I think till today we struggle. Like, for example, even when we get a new lead, I have this thing where I'm weighing it out and saying, is this a project that, we want to be involved in? And I think it's going to affect it even more now.
Yeah. All right, Rashmi, welcome back. I know there's a thunderstorm in Pune and you got cut off a little bit. One of the questions that we have is it possible to implement the Bhutan model in India for sustainable craft development? I have to admit, I don't know exactly what the Bhutan model is. Would you like to venture, I guess?
Well, yeah, well, I can only guess, and this is off the top of my head. I'm thinking that the Bhutan model is probably something that is, because they have this thing about a happiness index. So their progress is based on a happiness index rather than just progress in terms of an economical growth. So, and also if you look at the geography of Bhutan, I think it's more or less landlocked. So, ingress in terms of industrialization is probably slower. Also, Bhutan, and this could be a strong influence, is primarily a Buddhist state. So Buddhism sort of teaches you restraint and caring for your environment. So all these factors, I think, come into play when, when Bhutan promotes its craft. And Bhutan is also very strongly linked to tourism, I think. So there is a good sort of marriage between tourism and crafts, because when you travel, you want to take a bit back of that country with you. And of course, gifting and things like that. So coming to the question now as to whether we in India can implement the Bhutan model, I don't think so, because I think we are beyond the tipping point. Our culture is different, our geography is different, and we are far into industrialization. So there is a huge set of people in India who want really economical products. So I think each country has to formulate their own models, and the contexts are different, the culture is different, the legacy is different, heritage is different.
All right, we're almost at the end of this webinar. We're going to get really personal now. If we can have poll number 4, Seema. How has the lockdown changed you personally? Made me stronger? Made you appreciate? I hate it, and frankly, I needed this break. I fall into the 4th category. I needed this break, so I'm quite appreciating the lockdown. I don't know for how much longer, but as of now. All right, 41% says made me appreciate the small things, 23% are stronger, and 26% needed this break. Only a 10% says they hate it. Anushka, how has the lockdown been on you personally?
I think for sure been appreciating the smaller things, I think just generally doing the daily chores at home. I think it's also nice because you start appreciating your space at home a little bit more, and you're able to actually spend some time in the house. So I think I am enjoying that for sure. Has it been a break? Not so much, but I think we're trying to manage and do things, in the best way. Definitely a break from traffic. So that's a big plus for anyone living in Bombay. I'm actually wondering whether I'd want to go back into being in traffic for 2 hours a day. So like that's been something that's been playing on my mind because I got those 2 hours back, right? So that's been great.
All right, I have a quick message for Tanvi Nabar, our sketch artist. Tanvi, I'm going to ask you to share your sketch in about 2-3 minutes. We're about to end the discussion. In the next 4-5 minutes, we'll end it. We're in our final set of questions. We have a set of questions that have come in from students. A fairly basic question. I'm going to put it to Devika. A student asks, craft, art, and design. How do you distinguish which is which?
It's actually quite simple. So art is something that I would do. So the what should I say? The plus point that I have is I've probably practiced my craft for quite some time along with working in the craft sector. So art is something that one would create for oneself because there is a certain issue that you're trying to address within your head, and maybe you will share it with the world, but it doesn't matter if there's an opinion that is if it affects the other person or not. It's a more personal thing. Design is always based on an issue that the outside world has put in place, and you're actually creating stuff for an external stimuli. And craft is really simple. It's something that's handmade.
Okay, that's a
Crafting something
answer.
is handmade, simple.
Right. Next question for Jay Datta. Does education need to be redesigned? How to envision a future for Indian education and participate as a designer in that process?
Oh yeah, this has to be done in a much bigger way, especially if you go down the early years, kind of the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. I think the way we do it, and I'm seeing my son grow up, and it's hard. I think education currently is just another term for overload of information and who's done what and how and all of that, which is great. But in the era where you can just Google up pretty much anything and everything, the real thing is going to be on how do you connect those pieces of information? How do you make sense of that? How do you think in bets? How do you think when you have incomplete information, or in a situation like COVID, for instance, where we are working with incomplete information, things are changing every day. How do you think? How do you act? I think those are the ones which school never prepares you for. Design school gives you that ability at least to sort of look at pieces and parts and reconstruct parts, kind of thing. Like Ayush was saying, that you could also kind of recreate your process if you want to, and which is essential in some ways. But education somehow teaches you really can't do that, Indian education especially. So I think that needs to be a big part of it. Has to have things like entrepreneurship kind of built into it. I know a couple of people who are doing some good modules which fit in. Like, for example, the Delhi government is doing a bunch of things around that, where you actually get money to do some entrepreneurial projects. I think those are very, very important. And have fun, make mistakes, and not be always continuously marked for it.
Or on that note, I'm going to ask Karishma, Nishant, Seema, Tanvi, and Anshu, if you have the bandwidth, to please activate your video screens. Tanvi is sharing her sketch notes with us now. Tanvi, all yours. Activate your video screen as well. All right, so here's a summary of what all we spoke about: hope, apocalypse, kickstarting things, time to speak, take some time, don't rush. It's okay to feel a little down. That's what Anushka said. Health and sanitation is something you should be think of the possibilities in those industries, help support new learning, connect to corporates. If you want to help Arogya Setu, try and get in touch with JD. We'll tell you how to get in touch with him. Our relationship to our physical hands and to the handmade is changing. Can you work with your neighborhood tailor? Excellent point from Ayush there. Ashwini said that designers must learn to be diplomatic and not always rub everybody the wrong way. Devika said nothing is more resilient than the craft sector. And Anushka talked about agency and employee renegotiate a relationship between themselves. Rashmi said we can focus on design now, but the good habits that we learned during the lockdown won't start. Devika talked about how to recreate the tactile experience using photos and videos. All of you in the audience said design school should teach a little more finance and marketing. And product designers, Vinay said, should join collectives around the world that work in remote distributed teams. Oh, there's a lot of stuff we've talked about. Jerry talked about how internal teams have grown. Ashwini talked about empathy, and I think so did Anushka, about empathy with clients. Ayush talked about you cannot turn everything into a digital process. Some things are physical. A chair is a chair. You need to sit on it. And Ashwini talked about plant your tree now. Anushka talked about portfolio. Show us a couple of deep dives. Don't flood your portfolio with 100 different projects. Hiring people are going to want to see 1 or 2 deep engagements, not 100 shallow engagements. Ayush talked about how tech is not kept up with the needs of craftspeople and artisans and how they're ready to use tech, but tech is not yet in multiple languages and interfaces they understand. We talked about, I think Devika talked about, and both Devika and Vinay, I think, talked about, and Ayush talked about, there's no one design process, and you should teach how to make a process, not teach the process itself necessarily. We talked about agencies, we talked about employment, we talked about how Bhutan is different from India and how we like cheap products too much. Maybe we shouldn't like cheap products that much. Thank you, Tanvi. Thank you for the sketch notes. If everybody can switch their videos on. Tanvi, can you switch your video on? All right, it's time for everybody to put on your broadest smiles. It's time for the screenshot, a selfie. Seema, are we done? I'm sorry, Anshu, Seema. All right, you can wipe the smile off your face. We're done. Right, we have Karishma Ajmera back with us. Karishma, over to you.
Yeah, just a quick thanks. Thanks, panelists, for fielding so many questions. It's great that we had such a diverse panel. Always got a chance to listen to different points of view. Thank you, audience, for being patient, and this Q&A session helped add to your own understanding of how to deal with the COVID situation. Here's wishing you all the very best for your own resurgence.
All right, I'd like to thank Nishant, Anshu, and Seema, the ADI backbone that makes webinars like this happen and that everything runs seamlessly because they're working furiously in the background. So Nishant, Anshu, and Seema, and Tanvi, thank you very much for your contribution. Panelists, Anushka, Ayush, Vinay, Devika, Jay, Rashmi, and Ashwini, thank you all very much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, and bye, everyone.
See you.